thank you for the kind introduction and for turning up on a glorious Wellington Friday. You sort of wonder, what are we talking about here? And you know, Rachel was thinking like, this is a rather mechanical talk. The topic arose from an article which initially Jane posted on the forum, and I replied, and there was a few sort of discussion arising from that, which I thought, okay, well, let's extend it a little bit and actually talk about what are the issues. So I suppose if we want to translate it into British English, it will be the Morris Minor versus Rolls-Royce, but it's not quite the same because they look rather different. The Rolls-Royce and the Morris Minor look rather different, whereas the Chevy and the other one looks rather similar. The idea is, and that's the attachment for the original discussion. The idea is that to the user, to the person who is actually going to ride on it, it's pretty similar before you get on. One's got leather seats and one doesn't. There's all these other things that is fancy that is inside on the black one that you don't have it on the other one. But from the outside, they look rather similar. And why would you pay significantly more in those days, and even now, for something that looks rather similar? So what is the conjecture? The conjecture is that translators tend to stick to word price. When somebody asks you how much is it going to cost, you're going to say, I charge how much per word or per 100 words, and as a result this will come up with this. There is a gap, you all know this, there is a gap between asking price and what the buyer is willing to pay. Stunned silence. Or there isn't a gap. There isn't a gap, or there isn't a gap. There is a hypothesis that whenever somebody asks you, why do you charge so much, that tends to be the answer. My work is much more than, it's worth much more, it's a typo there, I was doing it in the middle of the night, more than the other guy. And it comes from originally the idea that Ruth, who's, bless her cotton socks, when she passed away, she was one of the major translators for a company, German English, and she was wonderful. She has got the subject matter all sorted out. She's the go-to person for a certain big corporate. And when she died, or when she was gravely ill, they found a replacement. They found a replacement much cheaper. And they worked out, well, actually, and as far as the users are concerned, reading those documents that is coming through from that corporate, comes to the idea that translators are interchangeable. That translation service is a commodity, so you can shop around. So that's the hypothesis. And the last paragraph of that article that caused most sort of stir is that, well, actually we don't deserve to pay more. We don't deserve to be paid more because we're not performing life-saving surgery or develop fancy computer programs that everybody uses, although the younger ones are not using Facebook anymore. You've noticed that, you know, it's migrated, and now the geriatrics are using Facebook, so all the others are not. And all getting $1 million settlements like lawyers. So that's the idea, that we don't deserve to be paid more, and that for working on something that looks so superficially similar, or that the client cannot determine the differences, why should it happen? So I asked, let's expand, use those concepts or hypotheses and expand on some of these. I will ask you, let's have a show of hands, otherwise everybody will fall asleep in the dark. What do you think? Do you think that there is our future, the future of our profession, is bright or is grim?
Are we talking just about translators or interpreters?
The whole industry, see now. And if you want to include terminologists as well, it's fine.
I reckon optimistic.
Optimistic. Also, got the optimist. Can we have the optimist?
Cautiously
Optimist. Can we include the cautiously optimist? Right. Do we have the pessimist? No pessimist. Surely. All right. So all of you who haven't put your hand up are either have no opinion and you crashed the wrong party, or you are sitting on the fence and it's bloody painful. Right, okay. So, I suppose the idea is, it depends on how you really see the world. Points of view of the glass of milk is half empty or half full. Well, that's you know, you've got various interpretation of exactly the same thing. So my question to you, I suppose, is flipping it in another way. Assuming that what we are doing is treacherous and, you know, trying to find out, wave around all the different employers or users trying to undermine our services, how do we succeed? I won't play the video because it's actually quite boring. It's the only video one. I think one of the questions that we often ask about somebody being successful or somebody being not successful is often the question of why me? Why do I always get the bad jobs? Or why do I always get the low pay? Or why do I always get the ones that actually want it done yesterday? Or flip it the coin the other way, why not me? Why don't I get all the nice things? And why do people always get the nice conferences or you know, translating simple things that get paid very well, like advertising, for example. People talk about small number of words. The idea is we always look on the other side. So, let's start off with technology, because people talk about technology. So, there is always people thinking about technology will replace us. Agree? Disagree? Disagree. But why?
We haven't been replaced yet.
Well, yeah, but maybe in the future.
Well, at the bottom end of the market, for the people, for the players who don't care.
Some wishes.
So in some parts, that the technology is replacing us, or has already replaced us.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
We'll go to Google Translation.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there's always the people often talk about that and fine. And interpreters are usually very smart and think that they will never be replaced. But people will probably know that, for those who are interested, knowing that Google is inventing or is working very closely on Google Interpret, on voice recognition and being able to interpret.
In sign avatars, sign language.
In sign avatar, absolutely.
Very hard on
Yes, that's right. So in sign language particularly, that's certainly happening. So the spectrum range from machine will replace us if we become obsolete, to machine will never be as good as us, and we can always beat the machine. It's a bit like, you know, every year there is the GPS test versus the London cabbies. And so far, London cabbies have won every year. So GPS have never beaten the London cabbies so far. Well, but I think, I would suggest that reality is somewhere in between. So, what would we say is threats to us? Google Translate, people talk about Google Translate being a threat to us. Is Google Translate really a threat to us?
Absolutely.
Right? Because it will get better.
It's pretty good now.
It's pretty good now.
For all sorts of everyday, if you're staying in a hotel in Poland and you can't make yourself understood to the front desk, it works just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For certain language combinations, though.
And they're using it all the time.
Yep.
People are using it in friends in Austria. Their cleaning woman comes in, they they use Google Translate to tell them what to do.
Yes.
Would they have gone to a TNI professional without Google Translate in that situation?
No,
It's a
possibly not.
situation.
No, but I mean, it's
Fair point,
But it's a tendency thing.
Correct.
I mean, once people start to think, oh, that's cool, we can do it with Google, there
Yes.
will be some cases where it does replace.
Yes.
Not
And there are
most.
cases in Russia, in corporates, for example,
Yeah,
big
yeah.
corporates, when there is no time at all to translate all the memos
Yeah.
for the top managers who are foreigners usually.
Yeah.
And I worked for one of the biggest, for the biggest aluminum corporation there, which is a Russian one, and we had to use, and that was about, I don't know, 6 years ago, but
Yeah.
already we're using quite a lot. I mean, we, as some of the translators, just to put this pile of documents every morning, you know, on the table of the, you know, top manager to look through.
Yeah.
You had to use, you couldn't, as a human being, you were not able to translate all, you were translating confidential information, but as for the everyday, day-to-day, enormous amount of emails or whatever, you just have to, you know,
Okay.
work on it.
So about the European
Steve.
Patent Office,
Oh, yes.
routinely use
Machine translation. But yeah, patent being a very
So
pro forma type thing.
it is a threat in some areas, very definitely.
Okay, what other threats are there?
The fact that everyone speaks one language, many people speak two, so
Yeah,
it's never going
English.
to be perceived as in the same light as accountancy and
Okay.
stuff like that.
It's
Why?
quite underestimated, yes, by especially,
And it always will
I
be,
don't,
yeah.
I don't give any assessments about English-speaking countries. I mean, English is a global language now of business and of trade and of politics, and it is hard to convince people that it's hard work to learn
And-
as a profession the
Yeah,
language.
and I
And
mean,
students may not want even to learn it as a profession anymore, the young students at the universities. It's very hard work.
This is sort of true and sort of
Very
not
hard
true, because you know, for those of you who were at
Not
the
as
Food
many.
Congress, you would know that there's a glut of translation graduates
I can
coming
see
out of
here in New
European.
Zealand, unfortunately, there is less and less budget for languages and cultures
Yep.
at the universities.
Yep.
And there is almost, well, in Wellington there is no professional translation school or interpreting school. There is no I mean, there is
Not even.
in
Oh,
Auckland.
so there's only
has
div
got-
studies. Yeah.
AUT
Okay,
has
that's
got-
right. Okay.
So I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Okay. Other threats.
Other economies where they can do it more cheaply.
Okay, so
Yeah,
outsourcing. Yeah, outsourcing.
Outsourcing is
Okay,
important.
outsourcing. Other threats.
Yeah.
Okay. Just listing a few. Globalization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Machine translation, machine interpreting. International English. In other words, lots of people who actually think that they speak English, or they think that they claim that their mother tongue is English. Recession, if we're thinking about one. So let's look at those. And now we'll put it in a slightly different slant. Let's look at it the other side of the coin, maybe talking about more volume and more markets. Pre and post editing as a profession, I suppose, or as a separate genre of what we do, and also talking about more niching. So you talked about only the confidential documents are being done by humans versus
Internal, if interpret translators, if you outsource to humans over there,
Sure.
not in the company, you also take out the data and
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. So
it's-
looking at certain specific aspects of it.
Editing machine translation came up at the NZSDI conference a couple of years ago, and
It
it
did.
sounded very interesting, but how on earth do you get into it?
Well, there's also a first question is, would you want to get into it? But let's not talk about that in a different.
Listen to that lecture.
That's right. And I would also suggest that the concept of native English is being more and more valued. And also localized English, you know, the difference between our English and the Australian English, you know, there are more and more of that being finely differentiated. And if there is recession, then there will be a need for expansion, or there will be a need for exploring new markets. I'm just putting it out there as possibilities. So I have in the coffee in the middle of Vienna, Franz Perhacker and myself was talking about this, and we came out with a paradox. It wasn't actually me who quoted. It actually France started quoting me, and I said, no, you cannot just quote me. You have to put your name into it too. So the idea of the paradox is that the more official languages there are, or the more multilingual society is, the poorer the standard of the TNI.
Yeah.
Look at the title of that Directorate General for start off.
That's why the slides is there. Yes. So that is the hypothesis. That is the descriptions of the paradox. Multilingualism is bad for us.
And yet it's also good for us.
Yeah, it could be close.
Do
Yeah,
you
it
mean,
depends what you call multi.
do you mean
Yes.
because there's an assumption that everybody speaks the different languages well when in fact they don't? Or what?
There is partly that assumption, but it's also partly that because everybody has some form of working out multiple languages, negotiating a multilingual environment, they see their own ability being better than what they are. And as a result, it reflects on training and it reflects on remuneration. So, you go, why? Why is multilingualism bad for us? Well, classic example, it commodifies translingual interaction. Look at India. Everyday interaction requires multiple languages. Everyday interaction requires negotiating multiple codes. You go to India and ask, can you translate? Everybody says yes. You ask them, have you been to a translation school? They just look at you and go like, why? I was born like that. And as a result, would you pay for a translator? They would look at you even more. Why? Everybody can do it. Why do I need to pay for it? Do you pay for people to walk? No. So, the more multilingual the society is in the everyday interaction, the less respect and the less remuneration. Switzerland, you would think that it's a wonderful country of high standards. But 4 languages, everybody thinks that they can negotiate somewhat the 4 languages. Interpreting standards in hospitals in Switzerland is one of the poorest in Europe. They expect you to be able to speak. Why would you not be able? It's official languages. The doctor should be able to speak and communicate with patients in the 4 languages. It's expected.